Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad and Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 75.
Ben, come with me on a journey back to 1947.
Okay.
I wish I had prepared better because I could have done a whole slew of things that happened in 1947, but I don't have that prepared because notoriously I do research 5 seconds before we start recording about these numbered things.
Okay. I think I know where this is going, but go on.
I just wanted to talk about one piece of legislation that was signed into law, and that's the National Security Act of 1947.
A very important piece of legislation. And why is that, Josh?
Well, for one, it reorganized the entire... Well, it created the Department of Defense. Previous to that, it was the Department of War and the Department of the Navy, and they were combined under a civilian head level, the Secretary of Defense. And it also called for the organization and creation of a independent Air Force.
Yay! That makes this year the 75th anniversary of the United States Air Force.
And you just found number 75.
Awesome. I knew this when at the beginning of the year I had to change all of the slide templates and all of my briefings to have a little 75 up in the corner.
Why? How many man hours did it take you to change your slide templates?
Because it's a significant multiple of 25. I don't know, Josh.
Who cares? Like, the Department of Defense paid countless middle manager office people to change those slide templates to the number 75 for no reason.
Happy 75th birthday, United States Air Force.
Happy 75th anniversary, you terrible soul-sucking organization that destroyed 10 years of my life.
Josh, listeners of the program may notice, especially when we started up this time and also in episode 74, that we have some new music. And I wanted to talk about it for just a second.
I noticed in episode 74, it felt like there was some kind of music fight going on because some of the music was different and some of the music wasn't. It was like our podcast was being annexed by some indie band or something.
All right. I'll take that as feedback that I need to work on it. There's two new things. One is a new intro and outro song on the podcast. That is excerpts from a song by Ammon on YouTube, Mediocre Animator. I'll put a link in the show notes, called Cascading. Original song. Let us use it for the podcast. Really cool. Highly recommend. It's a full 3-minute song. You only get to hear about 20 seconds of it listening to the podcast. The other thing I added was a musical transition within a segment, and it is a sound effect from real life, and it's related to the genesis of the podcast. So if you can guess what that is, go on social media and let us know and tell us if you think you know what that transition sound effect is. And no one's ever guessed what our first transition sound effect is either, Josh. Do you know?
What was our first transition sound effect?
Yeah, dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, that one.
I thought that was just like a random piano thing that one of your kids did.
It was performed by one of my children, but it comes from something that's related to the theme of the show.
Oh, we'll talk about the world's most esoteric scavenger hunt.
No one's ever guessed that one either. Okay, that's out there. If you're interested in that kind of thing, you like interacting with the show, you can come out and tell us. Another thing I asked for interaction on was on my birthday, Josh sent me a magic card. I told the value of it and the significance of it, but I didn't say what it was, and 2 of our listeners guessed correctly that the card was indeed Ragvan. Something. Some proper noun.
He's the pilferer or some nonsense. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just, everybody just calls it the monkey because as if there is only one that exists in Magic now.
Yeah, there's definitely more than one monkey, but this is a good one. I have been wrong on this podcast lots of times, Josh. I know you never are, but I am frequently wrong on this podcast. But hell hath no fury like that of a podcast co-host who gets the details about breakfast cereal mascots wrong.
What's really funny about this one is I feel like I remember calling you out in the moment, and then you doubled down and nope, it's absolutely a rabbit.
So, like I said, Josh, you're never wrong on the podcast. I am, so I'm going to I'm going to own this one and correct myself that the animal that likes to eat Cocoa Puffs is Sonny the cuckoo, as in cuckoo bird.
What I mean, he's cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Of course, he's a cuckoo bird.
I probably said some other stuff wrong too. I think that the toucan that likes Fruit Loops is Toucan Sam, and the rabbit wants Trix. Reddit user Shinkick said Sonny the cuckoo is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Toucan Sam follows his nose through the Fruit Loops, and Silly Rabbit wants Trix, but they're for kids. Geez, Ben.
Oh, Silly Rabbit. His name is actually Silly Rabbit?
Silly Rabbit. Tricks are for kids. I don't know. Is his first name Silly and his last name is Rabbit?
Maybe. Maybe these kids are being super formal when they're denying him his, crack cocaine cereal hit.
Okay, so that's it. I'm sorry. In episode 74, I was wrong on the internet, listeners. Hopefully we've set the record straight on stereo mascots. Josh, have you seen Top Gun Maverick yet?
I have not seen Top Gun Maverick yet, Ben. I'm sorry. The only real opportunity I would have had to see it was today, and I spent the whole day jackhammering a patio.
Okay, Reddit user Jim gave this great synopsis of it, and I had to quote this sentence. He said, "It scores added points for having a double Death Star-style trench run complete with the use the Force Luke moment for Rooster." I love it. Well done, Jim. Joshy, spoilers for Star Wars.
Spoilers for Star Wars. Yes! This is a record. We're like, 5 minutes in?
I know, right? So in episode 70 and 71, you and I talked about something. We introduced an idea that we called moving the cheese. And I realized that we explained kind of what we meant, but we didn't explain the origin of it. So I want to tell what it is, and then you can tell how it got moved. Moving the cheese is like when you go to the supermarket, you go to where you want the cheese and you go to find it. And if they move it, you get mad, even if it's in a better spot because they moved your cheese. So you don't care that it's in a better spot. It wasn't where you expected to find it. Go ahead. What happened to your cheese?
This wasn't exactly moving the cheese because they made it actively worse. And I have conclusive evidence that is the case. And here's the whole story.
Wait, who?
They Google, like the multi-billion-dollar international conglomerate that owns all of the information that exists in humanity.
Right, and we're not talking about cheese here. We're talking about the configuration of their popular web browser.
Of one tiny little feature of it, yes. So in the past, in any form that you filled out, or even in the address bar in Google Chrome, you could start typing something, and if you had filled it out before, it would auto-populate a drop-down list below it of the things that you could possibly want it to be. And I use that feature quite a bit. You would then arrow down to the one that's fully typed out, and I would hit the tab key, which would then fill in what I had just highlighted into that form, and then tab takes you to the next one. Well, there was an update that changed it so where if you tabbed to the next item in the form, it wouldn't take the thing that you had selected. It would just take what you had typed and I guess completely forget about all of the arrow key movement that you did because that's obviously doesn't mean anything.
Right. So and if I recall, I told you that you needed to get used to it, that what they'd done was better, and that you just needed to deal with it.
Yes, and I just the way that I do, I was convinced that wasn't the case, that somebody messed up because this is ridiculous and like hell hath no fury, like an accountant when you move their cheese. And I know that this was a mistake because, Ben, there was another update for Chrome earlier this week, I believe, and my tabbing is back. I realized that I'd been doing it for like 2 days before I realized, hey, wait a minute, and it was just working again.
Okay, so this is a thing too, and I noticed Microsoft does this sometimes. Like if you recall, back when they transitioned from Microsoft Office 2000 to Microsoft Office XP, they introduced something called the ribbon.
Yes, the ribbon.
And it really was better, but a lot of users are like, hey, you moved my cheese. And
where's all my esoteric drop-down menus that aren't very helpful?
Right, exactly. So they had to make it so that you could still show the menus if you wanted to for a while. So, okay, yeah, we moved your cheese, but since this is a computer, we can have it in the new spot and the old spot at the same time.
Well, I mean, this is important. You can't train people on your software, how to use your software for years and years and years, and then just change it all willy-nilly. That's the kind of thing that'll make me go buy a new piece of software. If I've got to relearn it anyway, I might as well go try something different.
There's this thing on the internet where people get nostalgic for the software of the past and talk about, oh, yeah, back in the good old days when everyone was using, I don't know, Windows 95. No, those were not the good old days.
Well, there are parts of it that were good old days. Like, they were absolutely old.
Yeah. I mean, it was progress. I think we can look back on the things of the past with gratitude, but they weren't better. We've made a lot of progress since then.
All right. Well, here's one of the takeaways I have from our moving the cheese discussions, Ben, is obviously somebody in the higher ups of the internet is listening to us when we talk about these things. As far as I'm concerned, we got this
This
fixed.
is the influence of the Bad at Magic podcast.
Yeah, we got this cheese moved back. So here is the next piece of cheese that I want to fix, okay? I'm going to try to...
Okay, this is an experiment. We're talking about this now. We're seeing if the executives at Google are indeed listening to the Bad at Magic podcast.
I'm actually going to talk to the executives at Microsoft.
Oh, all right.
So that's not helpful. But yes, this is the thing that I'm going to try to do good for everyone. Microsoft, if you are listening to me, I don't want to use Edge. Stop asking. Stop. Whenever I restart my computer, like one every 10 times, it goes to that, oh, let's set up Windows or finish going through the setup process. One, it's been set up for years. I don't know why you pretend like we're resetting something up. And two, when the only question you ask me is like, oh, it looks like your default browser isn't Edge. You should totally use Edge. Switch it now. And then you hide the no thanks. I'll keep using my current default browser as a tiny little grayed out link at the bottom of that page. You're not fooling anybody, Microsoft. Just knock it off.
Josh, this is not going to work. I know you just said that we were able to change the world because of the podcast, but what you're saying right now is not possible. Like, this is not going to happen.
Oh no, I'm aware. This was that was just a really flimsy front, so I could rant about Microsoft somehow trying to trick me into turning Edge back on.
I read a book, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of it, but they actually talked about this thing, basically, that if you want to influence something, one way you can do it is by changing what the default is.
Okay. I just assumed that it was Microsoft trying to harvest my information.
They do this because it works. Like, that pop-up asking you if you want to change your default browser, that actually gets people to switch. It gains them market share on Google.
I know, that's the kind of thing. Like, there's that little sliver of things that exist in the world. Like, doctors are one of the ones that happens all the time, where you go to the doctor and you don't have a copay because your insurance covers it, and then 2 weeks later they send you a bill for $50, even though you know that you don't have to pay that $50. But how many people just write the check and never even think about it? Like, how much stuff is out there and everybody knows, like, oh, this is totally fake, but let's just see what works. Robocalls are another thing. I don't even answer my phone anymore at all. Like, I'm going to change my voicemail to be like, hi, you've reached Josh, text me. Do not leave a message. And then it's just going to end right there. But, so why do these things exist?
Yeah, because of psychology. Because there are still people out there that, and there always will be, that are trying to find ways to influence other humans' behavior, and they do the things that works. And even if you are able to see the code in the matrix and recognize the tricks and see why they work and be mad that someone's trying to use that on you, the fact that they work means people are still using them. That stupid Nigerian prince scam is still getting people.
My mind is blown on all of these phishing scams. Like, they're always so bad. Like, how does anyone fall for any of this?
Yeah, it worries me though when it gets close. Like, I think I clicked on one once. It just came through in my mail. I was at a weak moment, and it was just the right combination of, like, barely plausible enough something. And I was doing, like you said, the person that got the check in the mail from their doctor's office, like, oh, whatever, I got to click on this and reset my password. And I started doing it, and I was like, wait a sec. Oh, no. I can't believe
they got me. Dang it, Ben, you freaking boomer.
Oh, jeez. And if I can fall for it, people like me can too. I got some news for you, Josh. Actually, okay. You have some news for me. You were the one that found this first. 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, this podcast was founded in Las Vegas, Nevada.
Which is a weird thing because neither of us live in Las Vegas, Nevada.
That's my legal home of residence according to the U.S. military, so I at least have a claim to that place. But you and I were there in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I brought my laptop and a microphone. And I said, hey, Josh, I've been thinking about starting a podcast because that thing that happened. If you want to hear the whole story, listen to episode 1. And you're like, okay. So we turned on a microphone and recorded episode 1. Well, coming up on the 3rd anniversary, because of COVID, there hasn't been an event like that in 3 years, and there's going to be one.
Finally. And I Google Magic the Gathering Las Vegas, Nevada 2022 at least once every 2 or 3 weeks just to make sure I'm not going to miss anything.
Yeah.
And so we finally found, like, the news came out earlier this month that they are going to do, they're calling it Magic 30, and it's Magic's 30th birthday, and they're going to have a big old, like, just the whole thing. They're throwing the whole enchilada. It's going to be a giant tournament hosted by the Wizards of the Coast themselves. It's going to be great. There's going to be a modern tournament. There's going to be side events. There's going to be the command zone for commander players. Like, it's just everything that we've wanted, Ben. And I texted you immediately, and I'm so stoked.
Yeah. I looked at airfare. It's like $91. I should buy my tickets now before fuel prices go up. But yeah, there's going to be parties, side events. Richard Garfield, PhD, founder of Magic the Gathering, is going to be there, and Mark Rosewater, influencer of this podcast and head designer of Magic for like 27 of the last 30 years, is going to be there as well. And as you and I discussed over text, the major Magic event that's going to be the Modern Tournament will end in a top 8 draft where people will be opening beta packs. Talk about the significance of that.
Okay, so for those of you who don't follow Magic the Gathering quite as much as we do, the original publishing of the game was very limited run. It was called Alpha. Those were the very first cards that were ever printed. And they had no idea how popular the game was going to be, and they quickly ran out of stock. And so they printed the second printing, and that was beta. It was slightly more, but still not all that much. It wasn't until revised where they actually printed like huge quantities of this
Right,
stuff.
but with the beta cards, they made a couple of improvements over the alpha cards. They changed the shape of the card slightly and improved a couple of defective things. So beta cards are considered to be the primo version of the first set of Magic.
Well, and this is what's crazy about this is the tournament, the modern tournament, is going to be the normal Swiss pairings. Winners play winners, losers play losers. And then at the end of 2 days, whoever the top 8 people in that tournament are, they basically take their modern deck and throw it away, light it on fire, whatever they do. And they're going to sit down at a table to draft, which is the format that I like to play. But they're going to draft unopened, unaltered, brand new, crisp
Where did they find
beta
these?
packs in a vault. Like, there's armed guards that are guarding this stuff. Like, it doesn't matter. This is what I'm trying to... It doesn't matter what the prize pool for the tournament is. Like, first, second place, nobody cares. If you make top 8, that's it. You've won the tournament because these packs have... There's the potential to have the Power 9 in them, Ben. Like, if
You could open up a beta Black Lotus in mint condition, which could be worth what, $500,000?
You could turn around that moment and anybody in the crowd would be willing to hand you over their house for that freaking card because that's how much it would be worth.
Right.
And I've been speculating this entire week on, like, how is that even going to work? So here's my thoughts is, one, that top 8 is going to have to be like live via satellite. They're going to lock these guys in a room with guards on the outside because these cards are worth enough to commit violent crimes over. Can you imagine, like, getting 3 unopened beta packs? That's worth, like, punching a few people in the face for. Second, all of those players are going to be, like, wearing, like, nitrile gloves while they're handling this stuff as delicately as possible. It's going to be the world's slowest draft because nobody's going to want to ever crease or crinkle nothing.
Yeah, so at high levels of collectibles, you get what's called grading, a high-level painting or comic book or something like that, and some expert will look at it and look for imperfections and use what's supposed to be an objective rating scale to determine, and the more close to ideal that things are graded, the higher their value. So that's what makes something really old that's in very good condition worth so much more than something that's really old but is in the condition you'd expect it to be, giving 30 years of wear and tear.
Well, this is the last piece is, so the way draft works is you open a pack, you pick one card, you pass it on, and then you are passed a pack, and it goes around in a circle until all the cards are gone. Ben, what's going to happen in this draft is they're going to open it with their gloves, super delicate. They're going to look at the cards. They're going to pick the one that they want. They're going to write down the name of the card, and they're going to take that card and they're going to put it into a humidor that's, like, on the seat next to them, like, perfectly barometrically controlled and, like, no humidity or nothing. And they're going to play 100% with proxies. Like, they're going to play with slips of paper with words written on them, and that's what's going to actually be played because these beta cards are just way too valuable.
That's going to happen.
Definitely. I wouldn't... My entire beta deck would be proxied. I'm not, even the basic lands, like, I'm not playing with those. They're too valuable.
Yeah, okay. Well, okay, so all that's going on. Lots of geeky, cool Magic stuff. It'll be fun. You and I are both planning on going, so it's October 28th through 30th of this year, 2022.
I'm going, even though that's a rough time, Ben. I don't know if you're recognizing what weekend that is.
It's Halloween weekend, I know.
That's tough for me to get away, but I'm going to make it happen.
Okay. And so what are we going to do? If listeners of the podcast come up to us while we're there, I think we should have stuff that we can give away. We need to pick out what decks we're going to play and start building them. Man, are we going to do something special for the podcast?
I think we should talk about this, but I've been spitballing ideas in my brain. Like, I want to walk around the whole weekend doing those selfie cam videos, and then we can splice them together and do something for the YouTube channel. I think we should absolutely record a bonus episode from the floor one day, just talking about something that happened. There's an opportunity, maybe if people are actually interested, if listeners want to chime in and confirm this or not, we could do a Bad at Magic, either maybe a draft pod would be amazing, or a commander game if we can't get that many people. I don't know. We should do a Bad at Magic something there if we're able to.
Okay. I like that idea. I'll start chewing on those and thinking of it. Like, if we were going to do a Bad at Magic draft, what sets would we draft? Like, what sets are the sets? Just like how in this show we did like our signature spell book. What would be the signature draft of the Bad at Magic podcast?
The signature draft of Bad at Magic would be the worst set ever. So I think it'd be Pack 1 would be Homelands.
No.
I think Pack 2 would be Kamigawa, like original Kamigawa. And then Pack 3 would have to be something random, Arcadian Masks or something.
Portal to Kingdoms or something like that.
Oh, good Lord. Yeah, something just terrible.
Okay. All right. Well, that's some stuff to chew on. We'll talk that through and talk about it some more on this podcast as it gets closer. All right, Josh, it's time for a Bad At segment. I think you want to do one.
Do I? Oh, I do. You lost me in the notes there. And also my brain was chewing. We should totally do an intro to Magic in case people listen to the podcast don't know what Magic is or don't know how to play. We should teach them how to play. Okay, sorry. I'm back. Focused.
Okay, that idea has been noted.
All right, so I'm going to do Bad At, I'm not sure what to call it. I'm going to do Bad At Social Norms, Bad At Social Cues, maybe.
Bad at Social Cues.
Social Cues, that's probably it. So here's what happened, Ben, is I did an experiment earlier this year. And for the entire year of 2022, I hadn't cut my hair. And I have had short hair, like military buzzed short hair since I was, 15 or 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And then I joined the military, and obviously that's the norm there. And then I just kept that haircut because I didn't know what else to do.
It's more than a norm, but yes.
Requirement. Got it. So I don't know why the idea got my head. It's like, you know what? I'm going to grow my hair out just for fun because I haven't had it. Just to see. I've never done it before. Whatever. Let's just give it a shot. And so for 6 months, I didn't cut my hair. And I had to learn how to style it, and I had to get stuff, product, I guess, and put it in and comb it specific ways.
Yeah, they have changed the name of that since I was a kid.
There's all kinds of stuff now, and I didn't know. I had to go on a website and have them explain to me the hold and the wetness and I don't even know.
Okay,
all the attributes.
Wait. I know you want to move on, but I love the fact that you did yet another Josh thing where you're like, all right, this tube of hair gel has a number on it, and it's on a scale of 1 to 5, and I need to know what this scale is measuring so that I can get the right one for me.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was I knew that there was hair gel and mousse, and then so I started Googling, all right, what's the difference between hair gel and mousse? And then I found out there's stuff called paste and matte. And all this other stuff that you can get in different little
pomade
tubes.
And
yeah. And so yes, I did research to try to figure out what it is exactly that I was going for. For me specifically, I was going for something that had no wetness, that had good hold, but also did some volumizing body because I live in a dry climate.
I feel breathless. What'd you pick, Josh? What meets all those requirements?
Old Spice matte. It's just this little red cup of stuff.
And what's the controlling ingredient? Is it beeswax? What's in it?
Maybe. I don't know. I did not go that deep. I said I decided okay, the internet says that for my requirements I need matte. So I went to the store and I was like, okay. The word matte, and I just picked that tube up.
That's M-A-T?
M-A-T-T-E.
Oh, okay. Something that controls but without adding shine.
Yes, there you go. Anyway, so then I was having problems because the sides were long and they looked weird, and so I was trying to figure out how to get those to work, or what are hairstyles for men supposed to look like, Ben? Like the top was different every day. I could part on this side. I could part it this way. I can go straight back. I stopped doing straight back when my wife told me I looked like a Steven Seagal villain. So I started doing the parting. But then like the sides, I didn't know how to do the sides until I started watching late night TV. And Seth Meyers has long hair and he just swoops his straight back. And so does Stephen Colbert, I think. So I was like, oh, that's the thing you do if you're a guy with long hair. You just take the sides and swoop them straight back. Anyway, for these entire 6 months, people would be like, oh, you're growing your hair out. And be like, yeah, what do you think? And they're like, oh, yeah, it's nice. And then I wouldn't think anything of it. Just like, generic positive feedback. Thank you. Generic acknowledgement. Moving on to the conversation. Next topic. But then, finally, I got sick of it. Like, it was just too long, and I was sick of, like the wind would blow. When I walked to my car, I'd be like, oh, how's my hair? It's like, oh, I put my shirt on in the morning, like, oh, no, how's my hair? Did it mess up my hair? And I was like, I'm sick of this. I don't want to care about this anymore.
I got to admit, I hadn't really noticed that you were doing that until one day you and I were on a video chat. I think we're doing a draft or something, and you had just taken off your hat or whatever, and it was all messed up, and you asked me what I thought, and I was like, geez, it doesn't look great.
So here's the thing, is I got a bunch of lukewarm but still positive feedback from everyone in my sphere. But then I got sick of it. I got it buzzed. And then everybody that I have talked to since then, every single person, oh, you cut your hair. It looks so much better. The long was bad.
Thank God, Josh.
Like, yeah. And so I'm over here just, okay. Why? Why is this a thing? Like, if I asked you for specific feedback, it's like, oh, yeah, I'm growing my hair out. What? It doesn't have to be positive. If it looks bad, tell me it looks bad. Apparently, I've been walking around for 6 months looking like a doofus, and nobody cared to tell me, hey, you look like a doofus. That would be the most positive feedback I can get, because I can go do something about that.
Okay, so what are you actually complaining about? Refine it down. What?
Okay, so the social norm and the social cue is when people ask you for feedback to just be positive, but I'm rejecting that premise, and I'm saying I want the truth. Like, if I'm asking for feedback,
do you really, though?
Honest
what would
feedback.
the world look like if somebody tried a new hairstyle and people were like, ugh, that sucks?
Then they would know. Go back to the old one.
You want a world where I think the contrast of you growing it out for 6 months and then cutting it off and everyone going, oh, that's the Josh I know and recognize, and that looks better with your build and receding hairline and whatever else is going on with your
watch it there.
with your look, and like, oh, that's better. Now they're willing to tell you. These norms, although they're not well articulated or well understood, like you said, it was near universal, right?
Near universal, yes.
I'll tell you another one we experienced that was very similar. Children's names. When you have a new baby and you present that baby to someone and they ask you what the baby's name is, whatever you say next is going to be met with some type of generic positive reaction.
Of course, because...
You could have named the baby, Zaboomafoo. And they'll go, oh, that's cute.
Oh, Zumba. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. However, just like you said how after you got your hair cut, the dam broke and everyone gave you feedback that by default meant that they didn't like it before. We experienced this, my wife and I, when we started having our second and third child, and people wanted to have the baby name discussion before the baby was born. And if you're not actually holding the baby, people think it's still up for negotiation. So if you tell them the baby's name before the baby's out, they don't withhold negative comments.
Which, don't you think, isn't that a positive thing? Don't you want that kind of feedback? This is how the world is going to react to the name that I'm giving my child. Maybe I should take that into account.
Well, here's the thing. That was my opportunity to live in a world where people don't withhold their honesty.
Okay.
And my wife and I both realized we didn't like that.
Oh, we didn't like that world. We want people to just be generic, nice things.
That's right. This is not your baby. Well, I'm not asking you for feedback on the name I've chosen. I'm just telling you what the name is.
But you see, that's the discussion right there. Is like, if you didn't want feedback, it's like, oh, we're thinking about naming our baby Russia. Just, I'm pulling random words. And they said, ooh, why would you want to name a baby Russia? That seems bad. You can just stop right there and be like, oh, I'm sorry, this wasn't a discussion. Like, we're naming the baby Russia, so...
Okay, so within our culture and our people, we tend to understand those norms pretty well. And regulate our behavior within the parameters of those norms. This week, I met a new person who was not a Native American and who didn't have those regulations. So I got, through my church channels, an opportunity to go help a new family that was moving into the area unload their moving truck. It's like 100-degree heat and terrible out. So it's kind of like the more people that show up, the faster we can get this done. It was this young family. The dad had just graduated from medical school. They had him and his wife had 2 young children, and they were unloading into this 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't that bad, other than there were stairs involved. And he's here for a medical residency to be a radiologist. Anyway, he'd met her because of his missionary service, and she was Russian. Like full-blooded, her name was like Alexandra or something like that, and she spoke English but with the Russian accent.
Okay.
And so when I introduced her and she spoke the Russian accent, and I'm like, "Oh, you sound like you're Russian." She's like, "That's right, I am Russian." I'm like, "My daughter's name is Russian." And she looked at me and she goes, "Why would you do that?"
I mean, yeah, seriously, of all the people. Ugh. Do you know what this reminds me of? All right, so
Sure.
this is the thing, Ben, is I maybe I just don't want to live in a world full of humans. Maybe that's my problem. Is because we have all these social norms that we've defined to just be nice to each other. You don't
That's
tell the
not what you
truth.
want either.
Hang on. Let me land my plate on this one. There is this in one of the video games I play, Mass Effect, there is a race called the Elcor. And they don't express emotions verbally. Okay? They communicate verbally, but they express emotions via pheromones. And they found that was a problem dealing with the other races that do have like facial expressions and tonality shifts and body language and things. And so they just developed that whenever they're speaking to somebody of another species, they say the emotion that they're expressing with the words before they say the words.
Oh. Like how in Spanish you have an upside down exclamation mark or upside down question mark instead of just one at the end.
Patient explanation. Yes, Ben, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's like enthusiastic retort. That's what I want.
Yeah. Okay. Patronizing feedback on your hairdo. I felt the same pressure when your hair was all messed up, and I thought, Josh and I are really close friends, and he can probably handle it if I tell him it doesn't look that great. Because you were kind of asking me for it. I don't remember what I said. Did you take special note of what I said?
Not really, no. I didn't take special. This is the thing. I didn't take special note about anybody said because, Ben, it's my hair. I don't give a crap.
Okay, Josh, I got to tell you something. This is something you do not know about me.
Okay.
15 years ago, maybe, you and I were sitting in a Denny's after Friday Night Magic, like enjoying some pancakes or something like that. And you said something to me about my physical appearance that I have never, ever been able to stop thinking about.
Oh, no. Did I scar you emotionally for life with an awful
Kinda.
comment? I do this to people. I'm sorry.
So if I did not, there's a specific kind of grooming I have to do, and if I did not do it, I would look like Bert from Sesame Street. and
Okay.
And that is, I grow very thick hair directly between my eyebrows, and they would just grow together, and I have a unibrow like straight across.
Okay.
So I have to separate my eyebrows, and I just do it manually myself. It's not like go to a salon or something like that. Anyway, apparently I was doing it lopsided so that it wasn't the same on both sides. And you kind of leaned across the table and looked at me, and he's like, "Do you pluck your eyebrows?" I'm like, "Yeah." You're like, "They're uneven." I was like, "Oh." So every time I look in the mirror, I look at my eyebrows and try to figure out if they're even or not, and think of that moment in that Denny's back in 2007.
Okay, so Ben, are you better off or worse off?
I'm better off.
Having known that they were uneven at the time.
I don't mind it. I don't think of that moment and like huddle into the fetal position in my mind. I'm just like, I want to make sure these are even because somebody like Josh out there that notices but doesn't say anything.
But I said something because I was trying to help you. I'm your friend.
Sure.
Right, you scared me for a second because you said that I mentioned something about your physical appearance. If you recall, like one of my rules is I don't
don't tell stuff about people that they can't change.
Yes, but since you had 100% control of your eyebrows, I don't feel there's no problem with that. No shame whatsoever. I was trying to help you.
Yeah, there's so many things in that category. Like you see someone with like a booger hanging out of their nose, and you just want to be like, "Bro, you got a booger hanging out of your nose." But like the farther away you are from them in intimacy, the less likely you are to do that.
That's interesting, isn't it? Because wouldn't you want a random stranger to tell you, "Hey, by the way, your fly's down"?
Yeah, absolutely I would. I was at a barbecue on Friday, and the dude I was standing next to and talking to, we're friends. We have been for about a year, and he was eating, and he just got a big old string of ketchup like right down his chin. It was there the whole time. And I finally couldn't take it anymore, and I walked over the napkins and handed one to him like, you got ketchup on your chin.
I wouldn't have handed him the napkin. That seems too dad. Just tell him, hey, you got ketchup on your face. Well, right here, and just make him smear it around. Yeah, there you go. You got it.
But don't you want people to kind of give you a bit of grace when you're trying a new hairstyle? Like, maybe it's going to work, but it needs to grow through the middle stage first.
Well, maybe, this is the conversations like that need to change. Maybe people, interpreted when I was asking for feedback, they interpreted it as, I am excited and happy about this change, and I'm calling attention to it because I want you to approve of these wonderful things that I think that I want.
You're right, and you're not looking for that particular thing.
I'm never looking for that.
Right.
That's not true either. I like to show things off to people that I care about. Look at this amazing thing. Isn't it amazing? But in this case, I wasn't that way. And that's the difference. Maybe I should take more responsibility for this and just said, hey, I'm looking for legitimate feedback on my hairstyle. Oh, it looks great. No. I said legitimate. What do you actually think? Oh, it's terrible. That's what I wanted. Thank you.
That feels like an oversimplification. Because I might say something like, well, it doesn't look great now, but maybe you need to grow it out a little bit and you can try something new. Or I don't necessarily like what you've chosen there, but I like the idea that you're trying something new with your appearance and maybe you'll find something that works.
Man, I love these crap sandwich qualifiers that you're trying to build off of this. It's it does objectively look terrible, but it's working for you, and maybe it'll get better in the future. Who knows? You should keep going with it if it makes you feel better. Ben, that was such a non-committal thing.
That was good reflecting. All right, well, I guess we're still bad at social norms.
Social cues.
Social cues.
That's what we're going with. All right, so that was a bad at for me. Do you have a bad at?
So something else we're bad at, Josh, is parenting.
Occasionally.
So I want to tell you about it because you like to give me a hard time on this podcast about my family's penchant for at-fault auto accidents. So
only because you have so many.
I'm holding in my hands here something I got in the mail this week.
Oh, no.
It is a certified letter. I don't know that I've ever gotten a certified letter.
That's from your insurance company.
It's from my insurance company. Before I go down what's inside of this letter, I want to talk about a meta thing about it, and that is that the insurance company paid $6.13 for this to be delivered to me via certified mail. Do you know the parameters of certified mail?
Yes. You had to either sign for it or they get confirmation that it was received by you.
Yes. So apparently, this was left in my mailbox without signature on Tuesday, and my daughter brought it in the house on Friday. I'm sure the people that sent it received some kind of report of confirmation that I had received it. But this is a signature-required letter. So I don't know what signature's on it, but I went to great lengths to report that through the proper processes because that is egregious. If this were like a jury summons or something and it had gotten thrown away with the junk mail or whatever, I could freaking go to jail. My postman cannot just be throwing certified letters in my box like they don't matter. That is not okay.
Yeah, you hear that, listeners? That is the sound of Ben Rich drawing his flaming sword against the bureaucracy of the U.S. postal system. Let's see how far he gets into that jungle before he dies of malaria.
I reported it 4 different ways, so yeah, we'll see. Anyway, this is my insurance company telling me that my family's driving record includes 4 at-fault accidents in the last 4 years and that they will no longer be insuring my family 1 month hence.
Get out of town!
I got fired!
You actually got kicked off of your...
I got kicked off of my insurance!
I didn't know that was a thing!
I know!
Are you paying your premiums? Are you paying your deductibles?
Yeah, no, it's not that kind of bad behavior. It says, thank you for trusting us to serve your needs. We're writing to advise you that your auto policy is being discontinued because of your household driving record summarized on the enclosure. And they give the dates and summaries of the accidents of my wife and children.
Oh, OMG, Ben.
Yeah, I got fired.
Okay, so you're going to have your second and your third oldest. I imagine they need to work together on a PowerPoint presentation describing all the pros and cons of the various other auto insurance companies that you have access to.
So that's one option. When life hands you a decision like this, yeah, that's it. Like, okay, we can just pay more money or shop around until we find somebody that's willing to insure us. Or what if you guys just stop driving because it's too expensive?
Ooh, is that an option that they gave you? Can you kick these two drivers off?
It's an option I'm willing to consider. It's not an option my wife is willing to consider.
Well, because if she's one of the people that you would kick off the policy, I mean, that would be a problem for her.
Well, not that. Like, I'm sure if we went back to them and said, okay, we're only going to insure my wife and I, then there's only one at-fault accident in the last 4 years instead of 4.
That's true. Also reduces the number of younger drivers that you have on your record.
Right.
Also requires your children to get their own auto insurance policies, presumably.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get maybe 3 quotes from different companies, like one without the kids and one with the kids, and just so everybody can see the difference. And we're being deliberate about deciding to pay this cost if it's even an option.
Have you called your current insurance company and just like get somebody on the phone? Because usually it's super helpful, but I can see them in this case being like, oh, sure, let's take a look at your record. Ooh, actually, sir, I'm not supposed to be talking to you.
Yeah, the letter's pretty clear. It's like you can come back in a few years if you have a good driving history, but for now, we're not going to insure you anymore. You can shop somewhere else.
That's nuts, man. Like, I feel like that's what insurance is, though. Like, if you've been paying them the policies, like, oh, we didn't think we'd actually have to pay for anything on this insurance. That's crazy. You can't be on our insurance anymore.
Yeah. So that's where we're at now.
So you're going to fight the U.S. Postal Service because of the certified mail debacle, but you're
egregious.
Not even, but you're not even going to call your insurance company and fight this, being like, what's going on here? I've got like I get that I've got a bad record, but I'm a good customer. Are you going to pull all of your other accounts from this insurance company?
Okay, I don't want that. I don't want that to just be a throwaway. As a computer scientist, you know that we have 2 kinds of protocols. We have lossy protocols and lossless protocols. Like, if we're streaming a video, we're just sending the packets out there. And if some of them get lost, no big deal. It'll just be a little artifact on the screen and it'll be gone in a second. But if I'm sending you a file that's like an Excel document with spreadsheet data in it, we have protocols and check bits and some to make sure that that data makes it to the distant end the same as it was when it left.
Ben, nobody in my generation receives paper mail.
This is one of the last remnants of that past age where we need a way to be assured that if we send someone information physically, that we know that they got it and they know that they got it. And that cannot break down. That's an important piece of our society.
I recognize that it's very important that you are aware that you are losing your auto insurance coverage because it is illegal in most states to drive without auto insurance.
I'm talking about the mail.
I know you're talking, but I mean, like, there's other. Who gets the mail? Like, did they send you an email about this exact same topic?
No, they did not. This is the point I'm trying to make, Josh. There are some things that we do that still trigger like the old stuff because we haven't fully put our trust in the new stuff.
You know what happened? Is this the first certified letter that USPS guys had to deliver in 30-aught years? And like all the old timers had never seen it before and only had stories of the amazing green tag that was assigned to certain letters.
Maybe.
And then 2, like this is the first time that your insurance company has had that dot matrix printer actually fire up on its own. Like, this is the first time the algorithm caught somebody that they're going to kick out. Like, spider webs, like moths fled from the printer as this document was generated.
You left before we made this transition, but I've seen it over and over in the military. You know, and I'm going to, for our listeners, I'm going to try to explain it, but not get too in-depth. There are so many things that we do in the military that require someone's signature on it. Someone in authority to approve something to happen. And for the longest time, we were still tied to legacy ways of doing it. Like, no one would accept anything other than an original copy of a document with the wet ink signature on it, even though no one ever actually compared that signature against like a verified copy of that person's signature or something like that. It was just like, this is the only thing we will accept as valid. And then we started to implement public key infrastructure and use digital signatures that had as much, nay, more assurance associated with them that the person who said they signed it actually signed it and carried a chain of custody so that there couldn't be forgery, there couldn't be manipulation of the data. It's very assured. And even though all of that existed, the system still resisted for the longest time and wanted still to have wet ink signatures on paper copies of things, right?
Yes, this is true.
This is an example of that. Like, the insurance company didn't call me. They didn't send me an email. They sent me a certified letter because that was considered by the law, by their company's business rules to be the most assured way of transmitting this information to me.
I'm still going to go with, like, this process hasn't been triggered in, like, decades.
I think you're wrong because you obey rules. But, like, if you ever got evicted from a house, I guarantee you your landlord's sending you a certified letter.
Okay.
He doesn't want to come to your house. He doesn't want to talk to you. He doesn't want to give you a phone call. That can't prove that he did it. But if he sends you a certified letter, he has now involved a neutral third party in transmitting you the information.
Okay. Oh, okay. I You are really fired up about this certified letter.
I used to be the postal operations officer. I was a certified United States Postal Service postal operations officer.
Because of course you were.
But this is important. At its root, it's like, how can you be assured that you transmitted important information to someone? Like the example I gave earlier, jury summons. Like if a judge says, pick off this list of random citizens, a group of people that need to come into this courtroom and be a jury of peers to convict this, suspected felon and potentially of the peril of their life. How can we be assured those citizens got that judge's lawful order to drag their butts into court? Certified mail.
You send them a text message.
No. New phone. Who dis?
Failure to answer is a felony.
It's time for Bad at Logic, Josh.
I feel like we didn't answer my key question there, but it's fine. I like the rant better. All right, since this is an odd episode and I am the odd one, I am picking a bias.
Okay.
Ben, the bias today is called the bystander effect. And
good one.
People have probably heard of this. I'm going to read the text on our Your Bias Is cards, which the gift that keeps on giving. You presume someone else is going to do something in an emergency situation. When something terrible is happening in a public setting, we can experience a kind of shock and mental paralysis. But that's incorrect. Like the idea here being that like this happens all the time. You see this, like there's a car accident on the side of the road, or even somebody as simple as somebody's got a flat tire on the side of the road and you see somebody standing out there like just staring at it, they're not sure what to do. And meanwhile, traffic just goes blazing by them. Yeah, sure, in that situation, it's not an emergency, but perhaps that person needs some help. Perhaps that person's never changed a tire before. Perhaps that person doesn't even have a spare tire. Maybe you should pull over and offer and just say, hey, you got everything covered? Do you need any help? But instead, we speed by and we presume that either one, they've got it handled, or two, somebody else will help them.
Are you ever the one that stops and helps?
Me? No. Me personally, no, never. Because I'm not that kind of person. I have been in the vehicle with my father when he's pulled over multiple times to try to help someone.
Why didn't that behavior get transmitted to you?
I'm going to chalk this up to I'm the black sheep in my family, and I just hate people. Like, everyone can just suck it. I just hate it.
All right, I need to tell you a bystander effect story that happened to me this week, Josh.
To you?
Yeah.
Were you the bystander, or were you the one that jumped in?
You'll get it. So my car was starting to overheat. The weather had gotten really hot, and my car was having problems with overheating. And I'd taken it into the mechanics, and they kept it for a day. And then I went back to pick it up, and they're like, we still don't know what's wrong with it. And they kept it for another day, and they're like, we still don't know. Take it back. So I took it, and it was still doing it. So I went in and I'm like, I need a better relationship with these mechanics. I need them to be vested in this because this is really a problem. So I went in there. I'm like, guys, I really need your help with this. Like, this is every day. Like, I get home and in my driveway and the radiator boils over and spills out coolant on the ground. I could keep pouring in, but at some point, my engine's going to blow up and I can't let my wife drive it like this. And they're like, all right, leave it with this again and we'll take another look at it and see what we can do. I'm like, okay. So there's a auto mechanic on base that's about a 10-minute walk from where I work. So I was able to leave it there and then just walk to work. So at the end of the day, I walked back and I come in and they made eye contact with me and I could see from the look on their face that they hadn't even touched it yet. They've just been really busy. So
of course. It's not that they've looked at it twice and like, I don't want to deal with this guy anymore. Just
this is where the bystander effect comes in. So when I got there in the morning, I was waiting for them at the time they were supposed to open, and one guy rolls up by himself. He's not wearing his work shirt yet, and he's already like looks like he's kind of flustered, and he's unlocking it. He's like, but then he puts on his professional like, sir, we'll be of assistance to you, that kind of thing. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, well, we were here an hour past closing last night. I'm like, you worked a 12-hour shift yesterday out here in like this 100-degree heat? And he's like, yeah, one of the guys blew out his back, and he's gone, and our new hire left, and so it's just two of us, and we're trying to run this whole shop, and we got all this work backlogged. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. So when I came back at 5 o'clock, and they hadn't even touched my car yet, and they saw me, you could tell that there was this desire to help me. And I sat down in the waiting room, and I was listening to them, and I overheard them say, one, that the lifeblood of an auto repair business is like the flow of parts. Like when you bring a car in and you're like, oh, this needs a new hootenanny, another doohickey, and the doodad. And they're like, oh, all right, well, put that in the system. And then that triggers some delivery guy who goes and gets it from some warehouse and brings it here. Well, because this auto shop is on an Air Force installation, it requires this rando auto mechanic, minimum wage guy driving a truck around full of auto parts to also be able to get on and off the military installation by himself. And apparently that day, that guy got stopped at the gate. So that had stopped the blood of this auto repair business.
Okay.
So I'm sitting there, and they're talking about the guy that threw his back out. They're talking about how they'd stayed 2 hours extra the night before, and it looked like they were going to have to do it again tonight. And then after they closed, they were going to have to take their own personal vehicle. And he said, and I quote, "We have 36 tires that we need to bring on base, and all I have is my Toyota Camry, and I can only fit 4 in at a time, so I'm going to have to make 15 trips."
So this is all like, I understand what you're doing here. You're building up this like sympathy story, but it's all kind of being, as I'm receiving it and processing it, it's getting filed away in this file in my brain that says excuses are like butts. Everybody's got one, and they all smell bad.
I know that's where you're filing this. That's why I'm telling this story, and you don't know where it's going.
Did you burn the place down? Because that's what I want to have happen next.
This really is going to take a left turn.
Oh, gosh.
So I said, well, tell you what, give me my keys back because it's the only way I have to get home. I'll bring it back in the morning. You guys can give it another chance. He's like, okay, I promise we'll get to it tomorrow. I'm like, great, thanks. So he hands me my keys, and I left. And all the way home, I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I got home, and I changed out of my uniform, and I switched over to my pickup truck, and I picked up my phone, and I called back the shop. And he answered it and sounded kind of flustered. And I said, look, Christian, I can tell you guys are having a really bad day. I'm all done with work. I'm sitting here in my pickup truck. Can I come back and help you guys ferry the tires onto the base? Now, I understand that this is like, there's probably like insurance problems, liability problems, professionalism problems, all those kinds of things. It got really quiet, and he said, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a long time. And actually, yeah. I said, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He said, that sounds great. I'll see you then. So he hung up the phone, and I drove back to the auto shop and picked up Christian, and we drove off the base and made 4 trips with my truck hauling loads of brand new tires for the auto shop. This is not the end of the story. This is me with the bystander effect. I was sitting there in the lobby with 4 other people who all heard the same story that I heard. But I was the one that was like, you know what? I got some time. I got a truck. I could do something to help these guys out. Maybe they need my help.
Just making the world a better place.
So I helped them haul these tires onto base. I kind of had a moment where like he was driving behind me in the car and I was in my truck, and they didn't know me from Adam. Like I must have had like $4,000 worth of tires in the back of my car. I could have like just drove off.
Just like take a turn where he's not expecting you to. All right, bye guys.
Anyway, the next day I brought my car back and I dropped it off, and all 3 of the guys called me by name, and they never had before. And when I came back that afternoon, he looked at me. He's like, I still haven't gotten to it, but I'm going to do it right now. And he dropped everything. Yeah, see, you're surprised by this. So he went out, and what I didn't know is even though this is the 4th time I brought it to the same mechanic for the same problem, this is the first time he really looked at it. So he replaced my thermostat, which involves taking off the hose and leaking all the fluid out onto the ground and putting the new thermostat on, putting the hose back on, pressurizing the system, getting the air out, putting new fluid in, stuff like that. And he came out and he's like, the system's not pressurizing. And then he was holding my radiator cap. He says, "I think you need a new radiator cap." Well, when he quoted me the price for replacing the thermostat, it was going to be $375. And that's based on the parts and the labor and the materials. And they just go down the book, and that's how much an auto repair place charges you to replace your thermostat.
Okay.
He handed me my radiator cap and my keys and didn't charge me a cent.
Oh, for all the work? Well, because your car doesn't work. He handed you a broken radiator cap.
No.
The system works.
No, Josh. No, you're filing that in the wrong place. He replaced my thermostat. He did $375 worth of work to my car.
But then ultimately you couldn't drive it away because he couldn't pressurize the system because you didn't have a radiator cap.
I replaced the radiator cap and the car works fine now.
Oh, okay. I'm misunderstanding. What happened was he did a ton of work to your car. And he's like, oh, looks like it was just this ding in the side, and then didn't charge you for all the work that he actually did.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay, so he committed a crime and stole resources from his business because you're a nice guy.
We were talking about bystander effect, but we can also talk about negativity bias if you want to, Josh.
Well, this whole time I'm listening to you talk about this story, and this is another classic Ben Rich, the world is a glorious place kind of story, because I'm just thinking about the decision path that I would have taken this whole way. And it
was kind of a fun adventure to drive around with a truck full of tires.
That's exactly where I'm going with this, is because for me, if it was my life and the guy told me that, I'd have taken it someplace else and not thought twice about the guy's problems. Like, dude, those are your problems. You should have told me that and advertised that to me before I got here, because now my car has sat here for 3 days and you have done nothing like what you're supposed to have been doing. I would have been super negative about the whole thing. And then I would have taken it someplace else and maybe had just as bad of an experience or paid even more or whatever. But Ben Rich decides to just open his arms and just not just accept what the universe is giving him, but give it a big old hug. And you had this little adventure, and then you made new friends, and now you've got
those guys are my friends now. He called me last week to check on my car. He's like, "Your car's still working okay?" That's never happened to me my whole life.
Well, this is what I'm talking about. Like, we lead such radically different lives because of like little outlooks like that.
I wonder what would happen if the Volkswagen dealer took my electric car away, if I'd be able to get it back.
You see, so this benefits us. Like, each of our biases, I want to say probably isn't true, benefits us in different ways. Okay. In situations where I'm legitimately being screwed, is I'm more likely to get out of it ahead. Whereas situations where if you were to put in a little extra effort, you could get compound interest returns on that kind of thing. You're going to benefit. So maybe it all balances out karmically in the end. Maybe for every Ben Rich in the world, there has to be a Josh Fleshman, just to make sure that we're not all skipping through tulips all day and stuff actually gets done.
All right, for Bad English this week, Josh, I want to tell you about another in this series of British military phrases. This is one I overheard in the British military. I absolutely love. It just shows that beautiful British sense of wit and dry British sense of humor. But before I tell you the term, I want to ask you a question, Josh. What euphemisms or what terms would you say we use in the United States military to refer to getting like in trouble with a superior? Like, what do you call it when they bring you into their office and give you a lecture?
You're getting chewed out. You're being
chewed out. Called on the carpet, standing at attention.
That one. Yeah, those things.
Okay, so this is one that was one of my British military officers was describing getting in trouble with his superior officer. And he says, "Oh, well, I got called into his office for an interview without coffee."
An interview without coffee?
Interview without coffee.
It's like, oh, the chap didn't even offer me a warm drink. I was clearly in some kind of trouble.
This is a British Army euphemism that means a severe reprimand by a senior officer, or by extension, a dressing down, interview without coffee. The etymology of this, as best I could find, is relatively recent. I couldn't find any instances of it prior to about 1990, so this is of recent vintage.
I like that one. You're right. This is a very British dry humor kind of thing, where they take something extremely negative and like put this like quirky little twist on it.
Yeah. It was like, well, the most unpleasant thing about it was that I wasn't offered a cup of tea.
That's good. I like that one.
All right, Josh. Well, this being episode 75 of the Bad at Magic podcast, you suggested that it was high time that we do another listener Q&A. We haven't done one since September of 2020, episode 29 in the Bad at Magic podcast.
Well, nothing's changed since then, really.
So we put the word out on email and social media, and we got a bunch of questions back, and let's dig in.
Oh, man, there are so many questions that we got, and so many good ones. So before we even get started, I have to say thank you to all of our listeners that reached out on whatever platform it was, whether it was, something nice, like an email or like a Facebook post, or whether it was something less than nice, like someone pointing their whole hand in my face, like, hey, what about this, you sucker? So we do appreciate the feedback, and thank you for asking these questions.
All right, the first question is a leftover from our previous Q&A. It was posted anonymously, but it's kind of a philosophical question that deals with what we do here on the Bad at Magic podcast, and it's regarding spoilers. When is a spoiler warning no longer necessary? What is the statute of limitations on spoilers?
I feel like we talked about this before.
We kind of did, but I don't know that we really got to the bottom of it.
I honestly feel like the polite thing to do is to do a spoiler warning whenever you're going to spoil something, regardless of how old it is. Because it costs us nothing to say, hey, by the way, we're going to talk about this now.
Does anyone actually stop listening?
So for certain movies, I stopped taking in media that were talking about specific things that I was trying to avoid. Endgame and Infinity War, I was deliberately trying to sequester myself from information about those movies, and I would stop watching or listening if I knew it was coming up.
Because the term spoiler is referring to, like the word spoil just means like something goes bad. So what is being spoiled? I guess it would be your like virgin mind experiencing a story where you know what the outcome's going to be.
Well, all right, let's think about the classic. I'm going to spoil an M. Night Shyamalan movie from like 30 years ago, everyone. The Sixth Sense.
Okay.
This is the classic example for spoilers because
good example.
The entire movie predicates on the idea that you don't know the twist at the end. And if you get that spoiled to you before having seen the film, the entire thing is consumed differently.
Yeah, and I think the intent of the original filmmakers is that you would watch the movie twice. Once where you didn't know the twist and once where you did.
And that second time is always very interesting to watch, not because of what's happening on screen, but because of the things and the details that you're picking up on this second go-through.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, but not all stories have that kind of thing. Is the protectionism surrounding a spoiler more critical for stories that are designed to be experienced that way? Mm-hmm. Like if you're about to hear a story where you already know the outcome, what would constitute a spoiler?
So, all right, this happens to me all the time when I see movies, especially nowadays when there's so many trailers.
Let me try to give an example. Let's say you're going to see Pearl Harbor. Like, what would a spoiler for Pearl Harbor be?
Okay, that's not where I was going with this.
Oh.
Where I was going with this is I can't remember the movie what it was, but there were several, like we'd seen all the trailers for it or whatever. And I remember consciously sitting in the theater thinking, well, this is going to have to go this way because there is a 3 frames in the trailer that haven't happened yet that include this character, so I know that character is going to be fine.
Yeah. I kind of want to talk about that a lot, and maybe too much of a detour, so we might need to put a placeholder. In episode 76 of Bad at Magic, let's talk about the recent Disney Plus Star Wars series offerings.
Okay.
Let's talk about Mandalorian. Let's talk about Boba Fett. Let's talk about Obi-Wan.
Have we not talked about Mandalorian?
I don't think so.
People, watch The Mandalorian. Holy crap. Go watch both seasons and just weep at its gloriousness.
But the problem is those stories are being told in the middle of the storyline. So without going any further down that tangent, that's something we need to deal with.
Okay. I concur.
Okay. So I think that there's a severity of I think that there's like a M. Night Shyamalan factor. Like the higher that factor is, the higher the statute of limitations on the spoiler warnings.
Okay, there's a direct relationship to the M. Night Shyamalan-ness of a film.
Shyamalama ding dong.
We need to come like it's the M. Night quotient or something.
Yeah. Yeah, if there's a big twist like there was in the last Spider-Man movie, there were secret characters that even the production company was making a big effort not to let you know we're in it.
Okay. All right, if we're going to define this, we need to do it right. So this is the M. Night quotient. We're going to talk about this in the future when we talk about movies with how spoiled they are.
I like it.
And I don't want it. I want it to be a random scale. This needs to be like a hexadecimal scale from 1 to F. I think, just to be funny.
Because I think if the M. Night quotient is low enough, it doesn't even trigger like your need to decide if there's a warning or not.
We need to. All right, let's put a pin in this. We'll need to define the M. Night quotient.
Okay. So our second question on our Q&A is from listener Jonica, who, by the way, is the one who created our podcast logo. I never thank her enough. Jonica, I love you, and our podcast logos are brilliant and awesome.
And timeless, and we love them. And I still have a bunch of swag with that logo on it.
Yeah. All right. And Jonica asks, what is something on your bucket list, and what about your spouse? 1, Jonica, I love that you asked this question, and 2, I love that you asked about my wife, because this made for a great conversation with us, because I didn't actually know the answer. Josh, do you want to go first?
I like how you asked me if I wanted to go first, knowing full well that I don't have like little notations in here, because no, I didn't realize that this was a question we were being asked.
Oh, all right, I'll go first. Bucket list is like, I don't know how it rose to prominence. Maybe I'll do an etymology study on this for Bad at English at some point. But I don't know when this rose to prominence in the zeitgeist where people talk about this ethereal thing. But I've never met anyone that actually has a list. It's just this idea of something you want to do before you die. And in that, most of the time we're doing the things we want to do before we die. But I guess you might be that person and be like, oh, I'd really love to go to Italy, but I got to save up some money or something like that. So travel tends to fall on this list, maybe an experience like skydiving or something like that. In my case, I've gotten to do so many great adventures in my life. It's hard to say I'm dissatisfied, but I would love to go to Tokyo, Japan during one of the sumo boss shows that are held there and go see live sumo wrestling and then see some of Tokyo.
That's an excellent bucket list item to do. Like, actually go sit in the stands.
Yes.
If you do it, you've got to go full kabuki though. Like the get up, the wooden sandals, all of it.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be great. I would love it. And I've found that I enjoy tourism more when I center it around something like that. Not just like I want to go to London to see Big Ben, but like I want to go to London during the Queen's Jubilee, or I don't want to go to Rome. It's like I want to go to Rome during the annual, patron saint day, and they're all holding their local festival. Like people, that's one of the keys to travel. If you want to go somewhere, find out when like a local celebration is happening and be there during that.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. And what about your spouse?
So my wife recently, as you know, if you've listened to this podcast for a while, became an American Sign Language interpreter. And she kind of, I asked her about this, and she also has a great love of the theater. So she likes when these two things meet, where she's an interpreter for a theatrical production. So she would like to do it for like some major theatrical production like Matilda, which we saw and is about to come out on Netflix. The London theater production of the timeless Roald Dahl story Matilda. Highly recommend. When that comes out, we'll review it on the podcast.
Okay.
We could just move on from this one if you're not ready with any bucket list entries, Josh.
Well, no, this is always, these kinds of questions are weird for me because they're asking you to define very quantifiable, specific things, and I'm not. All of my desires for the far future stuff they're not really quantifiable. Like another version of this question is, what would you do if you won the lottery? What would happen if resources were no longer an issue and your entire life wasn't consumed with the pursuit of wealth and you just had it? What would you do? Like, what would you go experience? What are your...
I don't know. You went from quantifiable to kind of philosophical in that moment.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like that, these are philosophical questions, which is why they're hard to boil down. I don't, like you said, like we do the things that we already want to do. Like if I had infinite time and infinite resources, I would play all the games. Ben, I would play all the games. I love games.
All the games.
And I'm terrible at them. But, this is, instead of the bucket list, I'm going to do my best. And this is the answer I give people. Like, what if you won the lottery and didn't have to work anymore? I want to develop skills. I want to go and experience and do weird things that I've never done before. And so I would, if I won the lottery every year, I would declare on January 1st, I'd be, this year is the year of bow hunting. And I would spend that entire calendar year getting as good as I possibly could at bow hunting. And at the end of the year, I would culminate it with some big like event to like capitalize on all these new skills I've developed. I'd go bow hunting elk or something. And then the following January 1st, be like, this is the year of blacksmithing. And I would get a forge and I would learn how to metalwork and do things. And then I would cap that off with the trip to the Renaissance Fair and selling my wares, something like that.
Josh, that was magical. I love it. That's why I love being your friend. You're so interesting. This reminds me of one of my favorite films that we're also going to have to give the full Bad at Magic treatment. We haven't yet, but we will. Listeners, I promise you we will. Groundhog Day. Yes. You know, one time he's just like, I'm going to learn how to throw cards into a hat from across the room, and I'm going to sit in this bed as long as it takes.
And that's, I don't know, that seems very fulfilling to me. It's like learning to do things.
Yeah. Awesome. Man. Listeners, you don't realize Josh already does this. Like, he sends me woodworking I didn't even know he was doing. I remember one time he showed up at our place where we play Magic the Gathering together, and he's like, look at this dice bag I made out of chainmail. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, I took up chainmail making. Really?
You love to bring this one up. I don't know. It got into my head. I looked at YouTube. It wasn't that hard. I went to the hardware store that night, and I started making chainmail.
It's because it's awesome.
It's not magical. I just decided to try to do it.
It is magical, Josh. Okay. Our next question comes from listener Ammon, who made the music for our podcast, and he says, what do you think makes the Bad at Magic podcast unique to other podcasts?
Oh, it's the only thing. I'm going to answer this one first because I know you have a long thought out, like well-defined answer to this one. My only answer is chemistry. Ben, like, there's a million two guys talking podcasts that exist out there. I think you and I are just different enough, and like I'm hateful enough and you're loving enough to somehow make it work. That I don't know, like the fact that we take things so differently makes it interesting when we disagree, but still respect each other. Like we share these values and we have such weird outlooks on the world that it makes this interesting concoction of a discussion that we have.
Yeah. You said you weren't going to have a wonderful prepared answer, but that one was. It was the same things I wanted to say.
Oh, but yours is like a bulleted list. I'm just talking, man.
I'll add a couple. I think of these as like the abiding values of the Bad at Magic podcast. You and I are curious. We like learning about the world around us, why things happen the way they do, you know, what makes things tick, why are things the way they are. Curiosity. I also think that we apply it to all of that, a level of critical thinking. You know, we try to think things through and not just make decisions by fault, but actually make them for well-intentioned reasons. And we have a love of games.
Yeah, that's true. We both love games.
All right. Bad at Magic listener Julie asks, what outdoor family sports or vacations do you recommend?
So outdoors are not my thing. Not a fan. My son keeps wanting to go camping, and I'm going to have to take him because that's a quintessential experience that you have as a child. But I just don't want to, Ben. I don't like...
You post some great outdoor adventures. Just in the last week alone, you sent me photos of you guys, like, shooting rifles, going on hikes. Like, you guys have great outdoor adventures.
I guess we do outdoorsy stuff from time to time, but I just don't like being outside. That part of that is I live in Arizona, and outside wants me dead. But I don't know. Is it... We go places. You know what? This is actually a good example. We did a kind of a weird kind of vacation last year during COVID still. We got an Airbnb up in Flagstaff, Arizona, and my wife did a wonderful job finding all of the interesting things that you could possibly do in Flagstaff, Arizona. So we went to like a Native American art museum. There is that lava tube I might have talked about in the podcast.
Yes.
We found that was up there. There was some summertime activities going on at the ski lift. You can go up and see the top of the place. There's a national park up there with like some ancient Indian ruins that we walked around and took a look at. So that kind of thing. I guess it's less of a specific thing to do and more of if you go to a place, any place that you go to is going to have things to do. There's going to be an observatory. There's going to be a museum. There's going to be some weird, quirky thing that only exists in that place. So do what you can to see if you can find it and go experience it.
Who typically is the leader in that? Is Nicole or is it you?
Oh, no. Nicole is 100% the one that does the research. And then I'm the one that just does the logistics of hauling us from place to place.
Okay. Sounds like you guys are a good team. Yeah. So like I said earlier, you know, if you're going to go somewhere, not only find out what's interesting about that place, but maybe also try to line it up with the timing. Like, I'll give another example. When we lived in England, we were only 45 minutes away from Stonehenge, and every time someone would come visit us, they'd want to see Stonehenge, and so we go there. But after the first time, it's boring. Like, there's a big, rope around the outside of the rocks, and you can't go inside of it, and they're just a pile of rocks. And yeah, it's 4,000 years old, but it's just a pile of rocks. So about like the sixth time we went, we were finally like, oh, not Stonehenge again. Well, anyway, one time my dad came on the 20th of December, which was the day before the winter solstice. And twice a year at Stonehenge, they actually take down the rope around the rocks and let you go inside of the rocks, because the way they're oriented, they align with the sun when it rises and sets on the winter and summer solstices. So my dad had just flown in. I'm like, hey, Dad, I hear they let you go inside the rocks. I know you're jet lagged and stuff, but do you want to go down to Stonehenge? And he was like, do I? So we got up at 5 a.m., went down to Stonehenge, and there were people dressed up in druid costumes carrying torches and like chanting chants. And we went inside of the rocks and we were like saying prayers to the goddess of the four directions, and everyone was singing and wearing costumes, and it was freaking awesome. And the difference between how awesome it was to go to Stonehenge on the 21st of December and when it was, and going there on the 4th of June, it was an order of magnitude different.
That's an excellent example. Now, did you go to the local LDS temple afterwards and were cleansed of all the heathenism that you had taken in?
Okay, back to the value of curiosity. I love having new experiences and seeing things. All right, and for outdoor activities, if you haven't yet garnered audience, I recently took up disc golf. I love it. I recommend it. There's a disc golf course near you. Go pick up a $20 set of discs and go start disc golfing. It's great.
The only thing I do consistently outdoors is run. I'm a big fan of running. If you can get to that place where it's like zen and you're hypnotized and you're just going forever, go do that.
Awesome. All right, listener Jairus asks, what makes someone good at Magic? Not just in reference to the mechanics, but playing the game as a whole. This is the Bad at Magic podcast. In saying that, are we setting ourselves up on a pedestal that we actually know what makes someone good at Magic? And if so, what is it?
Well, we can have opinions on what we think good Magic players have in common. I think that's what we can answer.
Let's hear a few of yours.
Okay, so for me specifically, it's an understanding of the interactions, because Magic is a game of cards, and it's super simple because every card says exactly what the card does on the card. That's all you need to do is just read the card and do what it says. But every card interacts with every other card in weird and unique ways. And so being able to understand like what this pile of cards specifically is capable of doing and why that's different from, say, this pile of cards, I think that's what makes you good at Magic.
I'll go a different way, and I'll say that Magic draws out of humans a level of discipline that they might not be inclined towards naturally.
I love that my answer is about like, oh, you need to know how these cards work because if you're going to draft them, you have to know it on the spot. And your answer is, well, you got to get like super good with one deck and just keep like be disciplined in practice and just know it through and through. That is exactly how you and I play, man.
Yeah, it really is. So I think the reason, to me, what it means that I call this the Bad at Magic podcast is that I can see and recognize what a good Magic player is and does, and understand that there's a gap between their level of discipline and knowledge and experience and mine, and also know that I'm never going to close that gap.
Oh, don't say never, Ben.
I've gotten close. I've gotten lucky on a few occasions. But for the most part, that gap is just this massive gulf that I'll never cross. And I can see that it involves dedicated practice, specifically seeking to try to learn new skills that maybe you're not naturally inclined towards. And by doing those things, you can develop a core set of just excellent technical play, and then layering on top of that the knowledge of the game that Josh says, and combine those two in such a way that makes you better than other players.
I just think it's a fun card game, and like there's a lot of cards, and I have a good memory, so it like sticks well. So I'm just going to do that.
All right. Well, we're not in danger of having to rename the podcast anytime soon.
No, I feel like we're both like if you think of the Dunning-Kruger effect graph. We're both just on the other side of that peak of Mount Stupid. We realize that we're bad and that there's a ways to go.
Yeah. All right. Listener Lauren had a handful of questions for us. And these were some good ones. So let's just go through all the questions here. One of them she asked was, what is the best advice you've ever gotten?
For me, the best advice I ever got was if you don't like something about your life, change it. And it just speaks to agency. It speaks to your scope of control. It just like take control of your own life. Don't let life happen to you.
I like that. I think the one that came to mind for me was another version of that same thing. While my wife and I were both going to college, we went to a fireside one night where one of the psychology professors was just giving like a free speech where he was talking about how to be a better married couple. And he shared some very candid examples from his own life that were maybe less not good examples, where it was early in their marriage and they didn't know each other very well and maybe they were having a bit of friction. And he talked about how one night he was mad at his wife and they were having a fight, and he went on the way home from work and he bought some flowers and he brought them to her. And she's like, "What are these for?" And he said, "They're for me." And then he talked about how doing something nice for her helped change his heart about the situation.
Okay.
And so I think about that a lot in terms of the thing, even though I didn't recognize it at the time, another version of that same advice has been what has transformed me in the right ways over the past 23 years now of being married to my wife. And that is like, the friction in our relationship that I'm feeling is because of something inside of me that needs to change. But sometimes what I need to do to change it is something that looks like an act of generosity towards her. And I could do it in a way that maybe is utterly selfish. Like I'm doing something I know she likes, making something for her, doing something kind, touching, speaking, building, gift giving, time spending, any of those love language things for her. Just do it because I need it. And that improves the relationship and changes me, and it makes for a better marriage. That's good advice.
I wish you'd have gone first on that one, because I didn't have that. My answer is not good enough. I'm sorry, Nicole. Like, Ben is being a really good husband at the moment.
I thought you gave another version of the same thing. Like if you see something about your marriage, if you feel like there's a problem with your marriage, you can change it.
I guess you're right. I guess marriage is a subset of my life that's in my scope of control. So yeah, okay. I'll take credit for Ben's answer then too. You're welcome, Alicia.
All right. So Lauren also asked, how do you prioritize time between work, family, and hobbies?
We can prioritize.
I think
it's family, work, then hobbies, in that order. Like, that's what it is. Like, I have a finite amount of time, unfortunately.
Okay, so you're just thinking of this like Asimov's 3 laws of robotics?
No, I'm thinking of this as, like, these are my priorities. Like, my family comes first. Like, I'm willing to sacrifice my job for my family, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my family for my job. And I'm willing to sacrifice my hobbies for both. It's like
But you just did exactly what I just said. You stated them in the terms of Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics.
So, well, then I guess, yes. It is just like that's the priority order of what gets my time. And only if the other two don't have demands on me can I fall back on the third one.
Okay. That feels like an oversimplification. I mean, do you ever find yourself like you're sitting at the computer playing a game when you probably should be spending time with the kids?
Ugh, I mean, don't we all? Well,
Yeah.
That's a bottomless pit and a trap, though, because you could always spend more time with your kids. Every moment that you're awake. Right now, we're recording a podcast. We could be spending that time with our kids.
I agree. And by that same token, you could always spend more time at work.
Yes, but we don't want to do either of those things.
Right.
I feel like there's definitely like this is a bad way to put it, but there's quotas. Like there is a point where you can kind of tell, and you get to that.
Where you've done enough. You've done enough work for the day. You can stop.
Well,
you spend enough time with the kids. You can go play some computer
Now,
games.
hang on a second. It's not a toggle. It's not an on or an off. It's a range. It's a bucket that fills up, and there's lines on the bucket. Like this is the minimum time that I should spend with my kids. This is time where, like, okay, they appreciate it and they recognize it. This is time that I want to be able to spend with my kids. And then there's the time where they're like, that was so great. We spent like all this time with Daddy doing all these fun things. And like you fill that bucket up to the point that you can, mentally handle at any given point in time. And then you move on to your next thing.
I like, this is another theme of the podcast that you talk about, how time is really the only resource we have. And yeah, it really is about just what are you spending your time on. I remember kind of falling for this like self-improvement trap of the idea of work-life balance. You know, that there was somehow some ideal level of thing. And I found it more helpful to toss that paradigm aside and instead think of there is no such thing as balance. There's just, like you said, what order you put your priorities in.
Yeah. If everybody loved to work, it wouldn't be called work. Like, some people live to work, and I get that. I think their priorities are wrong, but some people are that way. I work to live. And so, like, I don't spend more time at work than I absolutely have to, because that's not where I want to spend my time.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe we'll explore this more at some other point. All right. Do you want to read these next two?
Oh, sure. Why not? I don't know why these are specifically to me, but all right. This one also came from listener Lauren, and she said, did all your siblings turn out so well-rounded? And spoilers, everybody, for listener Lauren. Listener Lauren is actually my sister, and so she has a vested interest in the answer to this question, and it might bias or skew my answers, Gosh. So the idea here is that there is a well-defined and universally understood term that is well-rounded. It's like,
yeah.
I think that idea comes from those multidimensional charts that you see, where there's a point in the middle, and then there's radiating spokes, and each spoke is labeled. And then the farther everything
the
is
ideal is the one that's the same distance from the center everywhere.
Yes, the idea you're equally good or bad, I guess, in all of the different aspects of being a person. And obviously, being a person is multifaceted. So this would have 100 million spokes coming off of it.
Well, you know, like psychology has like 7 main aspects of personality that they measure.
Yeah. Okay. But I mean, even that is a gross oversimplification of the dynamicness of a person.
You could be infinitely nuanced about it, but if you compare a lot of those infinite things you're talking about, a lot of them are very similar.
Right, but I'm trying to be infinitely nuanced so I can give an answer that's non-committal, Ben.
Yeah. Okay, I like something you said earlier when you were talking about the chemistry of the co-host of the Bad at Magic podcast, and that is that it isn't the fact that we're both well-rounded that makes this interesting to listen to. It's the fact that we aren't.
Yeah. Honestly, this is exactly the answer I was going to give, is there's no such thing as well-rounded. We're all just people, and we all need to recognize that. Hey, everybody, you're just a person. Everybody around you, they're also people too. Ben likes to give a lot more H of G than I do when it comes to people that I don't know. That's fine. The people I do know, I try to give, what is it, the heuristic of generosity?
Hermeneutics of generosity.
That's why I didn't even try that word. So here's the thing, listener Lauren, also my sister, asking about how well-rounded my sister is. Like, we're all different. Like, I'm an admitted bad person in many, many ways, and in other ways, like, I'm a good person. Like, that's just depends on the perspective that you're coming from, what you're talking about, the context, the situation.
Yeah.
I think we're all just doing the best we can in a universe that doesn't care.
I think like an orchestra, if everyone was playing the same instrument, the music wouldn't be interesting.
Oh, what a wonderful metaphor that is.
Okay. Well, she asked one other question. I assume she's talking about you and I, and she said, how did meeting each other change our life, positive and negative?
Yeah, I think she's specifically referring to both of us.
So you and I met at work, and our relationship bloomed when I expressed some curiosity about what you did for entertainment. Now, I don't think, maybe I've never said this explicitly before, but when you're a married guy with 5 kids and you meet a single guy and you find that you're interested in that person to be a friend, there's this kind of allure of like the single guy life. Like going over to your house, you had all the cool toys I can't afford.
Yeah,
and you're spending your time however you choose.
I was going to jump in there and say this joke, like, but of course you ruined it because, like, oh, there's this allure of single guy life. But me, Josh, as a bachelor, I was not living that single guy life. I was living the single nerd life, which is probably exactly what you were looking for at the time.
Yes. So, and that was kind of a good thing and a bad. Good in that your relationship has been a very rewarding part of my life. You know, having a friend like you that I can count on and that I enjoy spending time with, and those kinds of things. But then equally, like the amount of money that I've spent on Magic the Gathering, that could have been like a down payment on a house.
Easily could have been a down payment on a house after this long. Holy cow! All right, well. Positive for me has been, like you were just saying, you're a great person. And honestly, like I've said it multiple times this podcast, like you just approach the universe in such a radically different way that it makes me stop and evaluate and think about the choices that I make. Not that I'm going to change them, mind you, but I think about them. And I think what's the negative aspect of knowing you as a friend? I think it's going to have to be, I know way more about LDS culture than I probably have any right to.
That's a good one. All right, so we also got some questions from Reddit. This one's going to be completely different from the, like, how do we philosophically approach life in the universe? And this is from Reddit listener Jim, who said, Lucky the Leprechaun expands his dominion beyond Lucky Charms and starts hoarding tricks. Who would win in that scenario? The perpetual man on defense, Lucky, or the perpetual man on offense, the Tricks Rabbit? Both are equally inept at getting what they want, but who is the least incompetent?
Man, this is a tricky question. Like, in all honesty.
Yeah, now, it is. It's great. Good job, Jim. So Lucky is always trying to keep people from getting his Lucky Charms, but every time he fails. And the Tricks Rabbit's always trying to get the tricks, but he always fails. So now Lucky's hoarding tricks. Does the Tricks Rabbit get the tricks, or does Lucky fail? Now, this is like if you take a cat and you strap a piece of buttered toast on it and drop it, will you generate infinite energy?
That's a YouTube video that you're referencing. So here's the thing. We have to make some assumptions here. That if Lucky somehow expanded his dominion, like obviously he has now harnessed the magic of his Lucky Charm marshmallows in order to cross into alternate universes where there are other cereal mascots. Or are we presuming that all of the cereal mascots exist simultaneously in one like Earth 626? Where they're all just constantly running away from children that are devouring their cereals.
Yeah. Like, as a kid, I was much more interested in the fact that cartoon mascots that somehow were like, did cereal come out of mystical pots and grow on fruit trees? Like,
what's actually in this stuff that I'm eating? Now, I this scenario specifically, I think I'm giving this to Lucky because he has access to the magic that the Tricks Rabbit just doesn't. The Tricks Rabbit is like Elmer Fudd, like setting up a donut under a cardboard box with a stick and a string, thinking he's going to catch the rabbit. Like,
yeah, if this was like an internet poll, I'm hitting the Lucky the Leprechaun button and not the Tricks Rabbit button.
Lucky the Leprechaun magically generated a hot air balloon from marshmallows and flew away at one point. So I feel like even as inept as he is, he has more tools than the rabbit does.
Okay, but I love this one so much that when this episode goes live, I'm going to put a Reddit poll up with a 1 week time window on it. So if you hear this and it's within 1 week of the release of it, you can go on Reddit and you can vote whether you think Lucky the Leprechaun would successfully defend the tricks from the Tricks Rabbit or whether the Tricks Rabbit would be able to get them from Lucky because he's so inept at defending his cereal.
I feel like this is unnecessarily biased against listeners that find this podcast, discover this gloriousness, like in the future.
Well, if you discover it in the future, you can go on Reddit and see who won.
If Reddit is still a thing. Oh dear.
Okay, Reddit listener NJ Groves asks, what are Ben's plans after retirement and why isn't it as a professional Magic content creator?
I love this loaded question. Ben, why isn't your plans to be a professional Magic content creator?
Okay, so we talked earlier about what it means to be good or bad at Magic, and while most people that like Magic are interested in getting better at Magic, there's also the fringes of things. Like some people like watching people play Magic that are just entertaining. And entertaining doesn't necessarily mean good, because I know people that are very good at Magic that are not at all entertaining, and I'll watch them.
I can name several of those off the top of my head.
Yeah, and then there are ones that are very entertaining that aren't at all good at Magic, and I'll watch them too. So I guess maybe I have enough of one or the other or both that somebody might be interested. There is some content if you go on our YouTube channel, link in the show notes, and you can watch some content of me playing Magic or Josh playing Magic, and if you find that entertaining, I could see. Here's the thing, Josh, how much research have you done into like monetizing a career as a person who plays games?
Just enough to know that it is not something that I am capable of doing.
What do you mean by capable?
I don't have the skill set to generate the kind of social interest. Like, I don't have the
Is it a skill set?
It is. It is the ability to engage other human beings in a way that they feel like value from the one-sided relationship. Like, I don't have
But
that.
you were just saying earlier, if you won the lottery and you didn't have to worry about what to do for work for the next year, could you take a year off and become a Magic streamer?
I mean, I could, but I'd only have 12 subscribers at the end of it.
Couldn't you learn what makes you better at that and get better at it?
Maybe, but like, Ben, all right, so a little peek into my personality. You're talking to a person that when somebody says to them, "How was your weekend?" I say good, and I go back to what I was doing, and there is a subroutine that has to run in my head that says, hey, idiot, you're supposed to ask them back how their weekend/day/evening was. And it always takes like 2 or 3 seconds for me to realize, oh, right, how was your weekend, or how was your day? Like, I don't know. My brain doesn't work in this social, charismatic, graceful way.
I get that, but I think people might be attracted to that. I think that's part of what attracts people to this podcast. You're saying that there's somehow some well-rounded idea of what constitutes the right thing. I don't think that's it. Like a good example that comes to mind is the talent show that was on Fox 2 decades ago called American Idol, and there was this one episode where this like Korean guy or Japanese guy who was just a really enthusiastic singer, but really horrible. His name was William Hung. And he won everyone over with his enthusiasm, even though he was a terrible singer. And he even released an album that I think went gold. But he was awful. So I don't think there's necessarily a core of this. But I want to get at what's the whole economy of this thing. When I look at something like professional Magic players, my idea, if I think that's attractive to me and I want to do it, my idea is always to go right for the heart of it. Like, I don't want to be a guy on the fringes, like writing articles or something like that. I want to be the guy that's winning the top prize and standing on the podium with the trophy and getting a cash prize. And that's the reason this is a feasible lifestyle for me, because I won.
Yeah, but those guys, their lifestyle isn't built on the winnings. Their lifestyle is built on the sponsorships and all the side ancillary stuff that happens because you're standing on the podium once or twice.
Yes, but this is, and we introduced this idea, I can't remember in what episode, but the long tail. And that is, there's so many people out there interested in the world's best card game that there's a lot of ways to make money doing it. And people keep inventing more and more new ones. You can write Magic articles that people read. You could make a store and sell cards. Or, as Twitch has brought out, you can just record yourself playing, whether or not you're good at it. And YouTube as well. And then you have viewers that come and watch you do it. So I had an experience when I went to Grand Prix, New Jersey. One of my favorite Magic streamers, who I just watched dozens and dozens of hours of playing, Jim. I say he's my favorite, and then I can't think of his name. Crap.
I think the funniest part of this whole conversation is you mentioned all the ways that you can monetize being on the fringes of the outside of Magic. And it seems like you've completely forgot the fact that for a solid 2 years, I tried to run an online Magic Gathering card store.
Really?
Don't you remember this? This world.
Vaguely, remind me. We've never talked about it on the podcast.
It was a side hustle that I was doing for a minute while I was flying drones. As I wrote all the code and generated a website from nothing. Then I bought a ton of cards on the internet, and I sorted them all, and I put them into the database, and then I sold them online. I had a solid 3 customers that I shipped mailers out to. I still have boxes of hard deck card protectors out of my garage that I had purchased.
The supplies that you bought.
Yeah, all the shipping supplies that I purchased to ship these cards out.
Why do you think you failed?
How was I supposed to take off? One, the return on investment was incredibly small. I was counting on the secondary market to make up for the retail markup that I was paying for all the product that I was getting. I looked into trying to get wholesale product, but Wizards of the Coast absolutely would not send you wholesale anything unless you had. There's an entire application process to prove that you were a brick and mortar facility where people could come and play games. So that just wasn't going to happen. And then, like, how was I supposed to advertise? Like, I was just yet another website out on the internet somewhere that somebody would have to try to find. I think I put a couple of $100 into Google AdSense.
I remember now. I remember helping you actually troubleshoot your website.
Yeah, it was genericgamestore.com. And like I said, I had a handful of customers, and nothing ever came of it. And I never pushed it super hard because it wasn't going anywhere.
Okay. Yeah, but that's a good example, because now maybe if you were trying to do the same thing, you would sign up with one of these like aggregators that kind of lets you do your business but makes it look like part of their business. So there's this mutual benefit where you are getting feed from customers from a mainstream website, and they're getting growth through you being added to their stable of people that create that sell magic product. Okay, I remembered. It's Jim Davis. Jim Davis is a good Magic player. Like, he's a top pro, but he's also just kind of a funny guy. And he does the template of what a good Twitch streamer does, you know, where they have like people watching and they have their kooky sound effects that they make and their little inside jokes that they make. And when you become a regular listener, you feel like part of the family. I wasn't watching him on Twitch because I hate watching on Twitch. I'm not that much of a geek. But he would record his best videos and put them on YouTube, and I'd watch all those on YouTube. Anyway, I'd gone to this Grand Prix, and I was all by myself. So instead of doing like you do when you go to a Grand Prix in between rounds where you hang out with your friends that you carpooled with, I was all by myself. And so I was like, what do I do? And then I heard Jim's voice, which I recognized from hearing him all the time on his Magic content, and I went over by him and I started watching his match. And then every round I would go back over by him, and it was kind of fun to be right standing next to this person who's dozens and dozens of hours of YouTube videos I've been watching. And then I realized something I didn't know the name for then, but I know the name for now, and it's what's called a parasocial relationship.
Yes, you thought that you guys had a relationship, and he didn't know you from Adam.
Right. So he was just kind of getting creeped out by the fact that I was stalking him.
I was just going to say that. Like, how did Jim ever acknowledge the fact that this random dude in a hoodie would just like stare at him at the end of
at one point he kind of just gave me a really subtle hint to back off, and I realized it was a problem and backed off.
Oh, well, you could have said hi. Like, hi, Jim, I love all your content. I'm such a fanboy. Please sign my shirt.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the original question, which is, why am I not going to become a professional Magic creator? Okay, so this gets back to the real heart of the question, which is, what am I going to do after retirement? So I'm getting really close. I got like 2 years until I can retire out of the military, and the military retirement plan is such that basically I'll collect half of my current paycheck for the rest of my life, which is almost enough to live on, which means I could either go back to a really thankless, low-paying job like being a school teacher, or I could get a very equivalent job to what I'm doing now, making equal amount to what I'm making or more, and basically increase my lifestyle by 50%.
I love how that you said half your pay is almost enough to live on, but it's not based on the projections of how many automobile accidents that you're going to have in the future.
All right, sorry, I forgot to factor that in. Very good. Thank you for pointing that out, jerk. So that's the question, NJ Gross. That's the question right now that I'm grappling with. Like, while it's fun to consider the fantasy of like, all right, now that I've bled, you know, and worked and fought in wars and been shot at and done all the stuff you have to do in the military for 20 years, now I can go do something fun. But really, I don't know. Like,
well, hang on a second. Now that's kind of cram these two worlds together, because you do have a unique opportunity here in that the position that you're in the military, you have some executive level skill sets in very niche areas, talking about like enterprise IT type stuff, right?
Yeah.
I feel like there's an opportunity here as the entire like gaming industry is going more towards mobile, more towards live online services, that there has to be some space in the industry looking for somebody with your skill set that is smart on enterprise level IT solutions, that is smart on the kinds of demands that a user is expecting from a game client. Like, there's opportunities there, I thought.
Okay. So I listened to a podcast called Drive to Work with Mark Rosewater. He is the lead designer of Magic the Gathering. And in his podcast, mostly what he's talking about is the work that he has to do for creating Magic. And when I listen to him talk about it, he's talking about meetings and emails and databases and stuff. But it's so exciting to hear him talk about it, because he does work where he's doing creative things. He's being creative. Like, most of the time in the military, you're not doing that. And I'm envious of the kind of work where you could do something creative. And I would like that. Not necessarily magic, although that'd be fine. But
Well,
I want to do something where I get to be creative.
Oh, you want to? Are you a creative type?
Wait, what does that mean?
Oh, my wife and I use this term a lot. It's like, oh, creative types. It's that part where people's we use it derogatorily because we're snobbish jerks like that. But like, I like to think that I'm a logical thinking person. And if you hand me a problem, I am going to solve it by breaking it down to its component pieces and then creating a logical path from point A to point B that is the shortest distance with the least amount of effort expended.
Did you just say, if you have a problem, I'll solve it?
That's basically what I do. Yeah. I solve problems.
Sorry, I heard that in Vanilla Ice's voice, and then my brain was someplace else.
Listen, I solve problems. Like, hire me for anything, I can figure it out. But creative types, they can also solve problems, but it's going to be in a totally radical, different way that may have no relation to the constraints or requirements of reality. That's how I see it.
Yeah, okay, so it's definitely not that. Like, let's say we're talking about the next Magic set that's going to come out and be like, all right, we want to create this set that's going to be a gothic horror world. So for the next 2 hours, we're all going to lock ourselves in this conference room and we're going to just brainstorm what that means on the board. We're talking ghosts, we're talking spirits, we're talking werewolves, we're talking vampires, everything, just as much as you can. When was the last time you were in a meeting where you just got to brainstorm nonsense on a board? Doesn't that sound awesome?
Am I getting paid for that?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I'm not that guy. Like, I can write a good D&D campaign, but like that's different from like the kind of creativity, the kind of constructed, directed creativity that you're talking about.
Okay, you and I discussed this exact concept when we talked about the movie Tick, Tick, Boom with Andrew Garfield, where he was starving and working as a waiter in a restaurant. His buddy offered him an opportunity to go be part of a fake focus group at an ad agency. And these people were languishing, and his creative mind was able to come up with a brilliant idea that nobody else had thought of. And then he had this moment where he's like, wow, I could do this for the rest of my life. And then he goes, ugh, I could do this for the rest of my life.
That's the creative type that I'm talking about. It's the one like, yes, I have this artistic expression, and no one's going to stop me, and I'm not going to sell out, and this is exactly how it's going to be.
Right. And I'm talking about the other kind that like, yeah, maybe I'm not going to be some starving artist, but at least I get a brainstorm on the board every now and then.
Maybe I'm just being more conservative, but maybe play to your base. Like I also listen to Mark Rosewater's Drive to Work podcast on occasion, and one thing that he said in his latest one that really caught my attention was they were talking about when they create new types of cards in the game and all the different departments that they have to talk to see if it'll work or not. And
yes. I listened to that same one.
Yeah, and some of the pushback.
Link in the show notes.
He talks to, I forget what he called the department, but it's like the online games or the digital. He called it like the digital department.
Yeah, that there's things that you could try to do online that are impossible to do.
Based on the implementation of the client or the infrastructure or how it's,
right,
or whatever.
I don't know about you, but when he said that, my ears were perking up. I'm like, what? What is impossible to do on a digital client that you can't do in real life?
Well, and he mentioned one is that there are a couple of the unsets, which is we don't really care about the rules. We're just going to have some fun with a card game type sets. They're not tournament legal. They're just for funsies. And one of the cards is like the time machine, where you take a creature in the battlefield and you remove it and the time machine from the game. And then the next game that you play with the opponent that you're playing, that creature shows up on a specific turn in the time machine. And like the digital guys told him, like, that can't happen. There is nothing that exists in the infrastructure of the digital version of this game that carries information from one game to the next.
Right. Yes, that was it. Impossible.
Yeah, cannot be done without a complete overhaul of all of the code that we have created. But like, this is what I'm saying. There is an executive level dude who is in charge of the infrastructure of their digital like offerings, like all of them. And this is not just Wizards of the Coast. This is every game company that exists. And Ben, why can't you find a cozy little cubicle somewhere in one of those places?
I think that sounds nice, Josh. I think I may pursue something like that. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Yeah, if you can get discounts on any of the Wizards of the Coast stuff, like I know somebody that would be interested in buying all of that swag. He's got two thumbs. And co-host a podcast with you.
Well, so watch this space, listeners, and Josh and I will discuss those future opportunities. I'll let you know as they start to take shape. Right now, I've still got 2 years left, so it's not really time to make those decisions. I'm just considering possibilities.
You have just enough time to get your master's in accounting. Come work with me, Ben. We can be super nerd, boring people together.
You think you're being facetious, but that does sound kind of interesting. Okay, so that one was about me. Reddit listener UJO asks, we know Josh had a terrible time at the Air Force Academy, but is there anything Josh misses about Colorado Springs? A store, a restaurant, a park, the weather, or is it all just bad memories when he thinks about the area?
Dude, what's really funny is we had this running gag at the academy because the building itself is physically nestled at the base of this mountain range, right?
Yeah.
And this really happened. You could be at the academy and the sun would have set and it is now getting dark. And you can get in your car and you can drive east to the east gate. And you got far enough away from the mountain range that the sun rose back into the sky. And so the academy is shrouded in this darkness. And as you leave it, then like the sun comes back and makes your life better. So like
that's a good joke.
Even
I like that.
I had a friend. One of my friends in my squadron was a weather major. He was going to be combat weather. Okay, so he had to be a full-up meteorologist. Okay, and he explained to me, and he drew a picture, like right out of his textbook. There was a picture of like, how mountain ranges have negative impacts on weather fronts, and he talked about how these convex forces or whatever, and like clouds and storms will just like sit here and get trapped there. And he goes, what's really funny about this picture is this right here. And then he drew the Academy Chapel like right underneath this microburst that was perpetually there because of the mountains. And so the weather, no, I did not miss the weather in Colorado Springs because the weather was always terrible where I was. The other thing about the weather is I grew up in Arizona, Ben. I grew up in 110 degree, summers that are completely dry. There's no rain ever. We once went like 180 days without cloud cover in my hometown. And then I go to a place where it's weirdly cold, and then in the summer it rains like every afternoon. I don't know. It was weird. What did I like about Colorado Springs?
I like all that meandering for you to realize you still haven't answered.
I haven't answered anything. It was the first time I ever ate Chipotle. I like Chipotle.
Josh, that's a national chain restaurant. That's a terrible answer.
Okay, it was also the first time I ever went to a Red Robin. And then there was like a full calendar year where Red Robin decided that they weren't going to serve any of the Academy cadets, so I couldn't go there anymore. Jeez, what did I miss about Colorado?
What happened? How did that happen?
Oh, that was that giant that scandal that happened while I was there at the Academy regarding sexual assault.
Yeah, but why would that make it so a restaurant wouldn't serve you?
Well, because of the allegations of what was happening within the student body, they no longer served said student body.
So that would require like a person in management to take a public stand about a group of people. That's like racism.
Ben, we're talking about like the early 2000s. This was, before the internet, before you could use the internet to draw that flaming sword and actually like punish people for these kinds of things.
That's weird, man.
Okay, how about this? There is a tourist trap, and that's really what it is. It's called the Cave of the Winds, okay? And I don't know why, but during our basic training, one of the things that they took us to for like a day off is to this Cave of the Winds, and we got to walk around and wander through it. And it's just a cave that they've put handrails and sidewalks and stuff on. And I remember it being, nice. But then a few years later, when I was still at the Academy, my family came for a visit. We stayed with them for a while. Oh, wait, well, no, it wasn't. Man, I'm getting these stories mixed up. This was years later when my parents were living there for like a little bit. Anyway, we were all there, and they're like, oh, what you want to do something? I'm bored. Let's go do something. I'm like, we could go to the Cave of the Winds, the one positive thing that I remember from this entire state. And so then we all went back to this tourist trap. And what I didn't realize at the time is they have, do you want the normal tour or the lantern tour? What's the lantern tour? Well,
do you want to go to heaven or do you want to go to pie heaven?
The lantern tour is like, the normal tour, you go through all like the handicap accessible walkways with the electric lights strung up in all the caves. The lantern one is like, it's just a cave. We give you a candle and you follow your person. Like, that sounds awesome. Let's do that. But before you got to go through it, they had this little plywood cutout thing. And it's like, this is the smallest space that you will have to squeeze through. And so they made you, like, you have to go through this hole in this plywood
Show
wall.
that you're not going to have, like, claustrophobia freeze up?
Or that you can physically fit. They didn't want you to get stuck down in the cave. What they didn't tell you is, like, there's a difference between a little plywood hole that you can squeeze through and the fact that the actual space that you had to squeeze through was a tunnel that was, like, 30 feet long.
It's like this plywood hole, but like 1,000 of them,
like lined up, stacked against each other. And so, yeah, I could fit through the plywood just fine, but going through that tunnel, that was a different experience. But that was probably like one of the most fun memories that I have retained from Colorado Springs.
Well, that sounds like the perfect answer to what Reddit user UJO was asking for. You used the words, the one positive thing I remember about that entire state. So do you have a photo of you at that place that you think you might be able to dig up?
I don't know. I'll dig, but I don't think so.
All right. If he can find one, it'll be on our Facebook photo album that goes along with this episode.
Oh, that was long ago, Ben. That was back when, like, it was my first smartphone.
Film cameras?
No, I think. Oh, we had disposable cameras on that trip, but it was my first camera phone. I think it was the original iPhone, and everybody knows how I feel about Apple, so you can think about how long ago that was.
The first iPhone didn't have a camera on it, did it?
I thought it had to, didn't it?
I guess. I don't know. Okay, well, that's a good answer. Now, Josh, we had a couple of other questions, but these ones you and I kind of cherry-picked because they were so good and so in-depth that we thought they could potentially be there an entire feature for a podcast episode. So listeners, if you asked a question and it didn't make it into our Q&A here on episode 75, it's because we set it aside to get its own dedicated episode. So congratulations.
You asked questions that were so good that we're going to have an episode all about you.
Yeah. So if you heard something that we talked about today or you want to vote in the poll I mentioned, you can go on our Facebook page and look at the photos, or you can go on our subreddit at reddit.r/badatmagic and chime in on the debate, register your votes, criticize our way that we depict cartoon cereal mascots, and we'd love to hear what you have to say.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. Again, crazy the amount of visibility we can get from one good review. And if you want me to make fun of Ben and vice versa, from now until the end of time, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad and magic.